Okay, so thank you so much for coming. I don't know how to thank you, really. I was saying it earlier. Um, but the work that you do is really amazing, and it helps immigrants and refugees and asylees, you know, work through some of the things that they need to work through so that they can integrate um, with, ease. And that's why I really respect your organization, and that I am so honored that you have accepted my invitation to come here today. So thank you, everyone. I would like to introduce you, Anika and Tizita. They have agreed to come to educate us on their organization and what they do for the immigrant community, refugees, and asylee. And so first, Anika is gonna speak. Anika is a partnership for trauma recovery's clinical director and co-founder. And she will speak about the mission of the organization to support the people. Um, Sorry, I have to admit people, and if I look like I'm distracted, that's why. Um, so she will speak about the mission. If I can ask you to mute yourselves, probably Abraham Nagash, can you please mute yourself? Because we can hear. Thank you. So she will speak about the mission of the organization to support people who are forced to leave their country due to danger. Anika will share information about TRS, and she will tell us what that is. Varied services to support immigrants as they recover from difficult experiences and strive to build new lives in the United States. And Tizita is hi, baby. My son is just entering. Okay. All right. Say hello. Say hello. Okay. Mommy is busy. Okay. Can you go outside? Okay. Thank you, baby. My apologies for that. I forgot to lock the door. Come on. Come on, baby. Come on. Mama. Okay, I will talk to you after, okay? I know. I know. Yeah, I have a 4-year-and-a-half-year-old son, and he's very, very hyper, and he likes to play, and he wants his mommy. So Tisita will speak about African community program that provide community well-being services through community-led outreach activities, context and linguistic specific emotional support and case management support to the African communities in Alameda County and beyond. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming. And Anika, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Sanait. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I forgot to ask you about the pronunciation.
You are.
We are very honored to be here with you and your little boy in the background and people who might be listening to this program now or later. So we're very happy to connect with you, and we're very impressed with the work that you're doing on behalf of yours and other communities in the United States. So thank you for having us. So Partnerships for Trauma Recovery is based in Berkeley in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And we primarily serve people who live in the Bay Area, Alameda County, but also different areas in the Bay Area and California. And our primary mission is to provide what we call psychosocial support for people who had to leave home sort of without wanting to or without planning to necessarily. So people who had to leave their country because they were in danger, or there was violence, or there was some kind of persecution. And they came here not necessarily planning or wishing to be here, but arriving here and needing to rebuild a life. So when we say psychosocial, what we mean is sort of attempting to provide support on different levels, both emotionally for people as they arrive in a new country and have gone through difficult life experiences, and they're landing here and trying to start anew, often with very little support and very little social connections here. So emotional support and recovery support for experiences of trauma and displacement. and uprooting from one's community and family and country. Practical support for navigating a new life, often without access to language or access to financial resources or different resources. So really practical support through case management and different psychoeducation and connection to different organizations and information about what's available and what people's rights are. And then social support in terms, and Tizita will speak more about this, in terms of sort of collective and community activities, information, gatherings, you know, eating food together, perhaps celebrating together, or having conversations together. So when we try to think about recovery from a trauma or violence, we try to think on all these levels, sort of internal, emotional, psychological, external, practical and material, economic and linguistic and educational and jobs, and social in terms of relationships and other people, and combating isolation and loneliness when people arrive in a new place. So those are kind of the different ways we try to offer services to help people adapt and recover. So again, when we think about healing from trauma or violence that people might have experienced, we really think about individuals and we think about groups. So we think about families, couples, parents and kids, and social groups and linguistic groups and countries. So we kind of try to think on many levels. Of course, we can't always do everything, but we really do try to think about humans being both their internal life and their external relationship lives. So we are, you know, we have a clinic in Berkeley. We've been operating remotely for the past year, all through Zoom like this, which has worked much better than we thought, but we're based in Berkeley. And then Tizita and her team, African Communities team, go around and do activities in many different places. And what we really try to do in our services is think about not just the cultural diversity of the people we work with, because people come from all over the world. We have clients from about 45 to 50 countries that we meet with. So thinking about people's cultural background, but also the context. So it's not just the culture, but it's also the environment that people come from. So for example, if people come from a rural environment, a very small village, and haven't been to school, we want to really try to adapt how we provide our services to fit better with that person's life experiences and the context and what's familiar to them. So we try to be responsive and understanding and inform ourselves of the places where people are coming from. And that would include the history of the places, the politics of the places, the kinds of situations that are happening in the places, and why people had to leave. So in many ways, you know, since we are thinking about human rights and we're thinking about justice, both in the countries that people come from and in the United States where people are trying to settle in, our work is really very politically involved. And a lot of the people who have to leave were politically involved or had certain beliefs that led to them having to leave home. So we believe that our work is very human rights oriented, as well as sort of trauma recovery oriented. So we try to provide our services as much as possible in languages that are accessible. So we work with a team of interpreters. We try to keep the same interpreters when we do our work with people so that it becomes a teamwork and people get to know each other and work collaboratively in a team. Our services are free, so there's no cost for the services that we offer, and I'll go into more detail about what are the services. And also the only requirement for being part of our different programs is that you had to leave your home because of some kind of danger. So it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter if you don't have health insurance, it doesn't matter if you don't have legal status. Most of the people we work with don't yet have asylum, so are still waiting or applying for asylum. The only thing is that you have to have left home because of danger. So we don't serve all immigrants, we serve the group of immigrants that were forcibly displaced primarily. Although again, Tizita will tell us more because the African Communities program is more broad in terms of all African immigrants, regardless of why they left home. So the different services we offer, some of them are one-on-one counseling. So that's kind of how we started. We're only 5 years old. We started in 2015, 6 years old now. So we're a young organization. And our core, the beginning core service that we had was counseling, one-on-one trauma recovery counseling and case management for people. We also work with families and dyads, so parent-child or couples. And we also offer some support groups So we've had different support groups that have existed for different languages and different sort of parents or women or people in certain particular circumstances. So we offer the kind of counseling element. We also offer what we call case management, which sort of can be very broad. So sort of practical support in accessing care or services. For example, if someone needs a doctor but doesn't really know how to go to a doctor or seek a kind of health insurance, if you don't have asylum yet, we try to assist people in getting health insurance and connecting with a clinic with a doctor. So medical care, legal support, language classes, for example, we assist people in looking for where their English class is near where they live. If somebody is just arrived, for example, and maybe they're living in someone's apartment and they're sleeping on the couch and they have no income and they don't have a work permit, so we might be able to help them find a place to get food. So where next to their house is there a place where they can get free food so they don't have to depend entirely on their hosts, for example. So different kinds of practical daily needs that people have, especially in the first year or two, or especially before having a work permit. We can assist people with those kinds of things. And then, as Tizita will explain more, sort of more community activities. We are in the process of expanding beyond this, and we're developing more of what we're calling our psychosocial care services, which will hopefully include like activities. So for example, groups getting together to do certain kind of art or certain kind of cooking, for example, or doing gardening and certain activities. We haven't yet started that, but that's in our plan to have sort of more community gathering types of activities. Because we really believe that healing and adjusting to a new country takes all kinds of different things. It can include talking about difficult life experiences, but it can also include having fun and sharing food together, or doing a coffee ceremony, or doing yoga, or whatever it might be that people might be interested in. So these are the kinds of different ways that we are trying to offer support, connection, and healing opportunities for people as they adjust here. And, you know, a lot of the people that we work with experience a lot of fear and worry about their own security and status in the United States, a lot of worry about their family and friends at home who are often not very safe. They experience often a lot of sadness and grief at different losses, including just the loss of one's country and family. People often have difficulty sleeping and resting because they're feeling worried and anxious. So these are the kinds of very typical and normal things that people are struggling with when they arrive, that we try to help them, you know, sort of move through and feel better about. So I don't know, Sanait, where I am in terms of time, but that's sort of a very general introduction to our organization and what we're for and what we do.
You're perfect, as if, you know, there's I think 1 or 2 minutes left. But thank you so much. That gives us you know, a general idea of what you guys do. And again, let me say that it's what you do is very important, because immigrants come to the US and they're shy, they're modest, and even though they need help, they really don't know how to ask. And having an organization like you helps them, you know, to come and get what they need to get. So what I heard you say is you have the mental health section of it for people with human rights trauma, but also you have trauma as in as a general. Is that what I heard?
So that's a great question. You know, the people that we see come from very different contexts.
Right.
So some of the traumas are definitely human rights, like human rights kinds of violations related to war or political persecution or imprisonment in different situations in different countries. Mm-hmm. We also have other people who have fled domestic violence or more criminal violence type of situations. So for example, in Central America, some of the situations are women having been abused by their partners and not being able to find safety, or people experiencing violence related to gang violence and activities in that country. So it really varies broadly depending on the country and the types of things that are happening in that country at that time and the history of the country. So some may not be considered, you know, sort of officially human rights violations. I mean, we believe they are, right? Those kinds of violences are human rights violations, but there's a broad spectrum of different things that people have gone through and that led them to have to leave.
Got it. Yeah. I think that is very clear now. And so you have the case management part of it, and you also have the mental health part of it. So if they need more of the mental health a section of it, they can have that, but you can also help your clients in getting some of the basic things that we all struggle with when we first arrive, is what I heard. And I think that's really amazing because a lot of people need help with those. And you said about you're doing this only on Zoom currently, and but you're expanding, and you said that you're starting psychosocial program that Tizita is also working hard on. And I thought that was really amazing, like, you know, because one of the biggest thing I think is the number one thing that is so important for the immigrant community when they first come, and even after that, is the support system. So having that kind of, you know, community play and yoga or coffee ceremony or whatever, that's really, really important, because that would bring people together and they can actually find their support system from that. So I really thank you for what you do. And those are the things that popped out for me, what I heard from what you talked. You gave a lot of information, but those were the key points that I got. So before we go to Tizita, I want to give the opportunity for people to ask questions if there is any. So let me see. So those on Zoom, you can just unmute yourself if you have any question, or just raise your hand where it says the reaction under next to support on the bottom, and you can raise your hand or just unmute yourself and start talking. And I'm going to look on Facebook if there's any question there. I don't see any question there. Anyone has a question? I see Giorgio, do you have any question?
Yeah, no, I don't have, but I came late. I didn't hear the whole
Story?
speech, yeah, the whole story, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, another, if there
Okay.
are others, yeah.
Okay, no problem. I can share the recording of this if you like to listen to what we have talked about before. So just let me know, and then I will send it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question?
So Night, you had mentioned that someone had a question before, right? About
Yes.
how did you want to ask that one?
I do have that question. I was just thinking maybe
okay,
people,
sorry.
I was trying to give other people the option. So the question that someone from Texas sent, because they couldn't come, was how can I tell if I need support? What are the signs of trauma?
Okay, no, that's a really great question. And I think, you know, the way we think about the impact of trauma is not as a mental health problem. It is as a normal human response to danger, right? Because not only do humans all respond in very similar ways, all mammals respond in very similar ways. Like if any of you have pets, you know that if your pet has been scared, even of a small thing, the pet will react with a startle and will avoid and will be untrusting and will be feeling fearful that someone's going to hurt them. I just have a new puppy, I have a new dog, and I see that with the dog, and she's fine, but she gets very scared very easily of things. So when we're scared as human beings, we have a whole bunch of reactions that are very normal. So we really see this at PTR as normal human responses to danger, not as a mental illness problem, right? They can lead to suffering. They can lead to very serious suffering sometimes, where someone feels like they can't live very well because they're struggling so much. So they may feel very sick and very unwell. But we don't really see that as mental illness. We see that as suffering related to harm that was done to the person. And of course, there are differences between different cultures and how people express themselves, but there are also incredible similarities. That is, all of us as mammals and as humans, we have very, very big similarities on how we feel about this. So an example is having a hard time sleeping. So almost anyone who's had pretty acute trauma, danger experiences, has a hard time sleeping because their body is alert and they're wondering if there's danger, and they're hyper aroused and they can't relax because they don't feel safe, and their mind is going and they're thinking about things and they can't rest and they can't sleep. And the more you can't sleep, the more you're tired and the more you don't feel well and the more you get depressed, right? So this is an example. Having insomnia and having bad dreams that relate to what might have happened to you in some way or look similar to what happened to you, or just being in danger, is a very, very common thing and is very difficult for people, because when you can't sleep, you can't heal. Then you are sleep deprived and you have all kinds of other problems because of that. So, that's an example. When you really can't sleep and you can't rest at night, that's very bad for you and it's very painful. And it would be really good to get some support, because then there's pretty easy ways to help you sleep. Like there's some medicine that you can take for a little while where you can start sleeping. And just because you sleep, you start feeling better. I don't know, new mothers, Tizita and Sanait, you probably know, right? When you're sleep deprived, those first weeks and months of your child arriving, you feel terrible. And once you start sleeping better, you feel so much better. So in order to function in daily life, we do need to sleep. So just that thing of insomnia can be really a problem. So that's an example of when it would be good to get support if you're not able to sleep. Other things that are so common are just feeling really worried and anxious all the time and feeling like you're just thinking about bad things. You're worried about bad things happening to loved ones or to yourself. You're feeling sort of, you can't relax, and that's making it hard for you to live your life. It's making it hard for you to go out. You feel unsafe. That blocks you. So it's hard to settle down. It's hard to make a friend. It's hard to find work when you're feeling so worried. So that's another example of a common thing, anxiety and fear, that is really good to get help, because if you that starts lowering, if you have support, then you can adjust better to your new life and you can do the things that you want to do. You can learn the language and you can find a job more easily. Another really big one is just sadness, like a really big sadness, feeling so discouraged, feeling bad about yourself, feeling like there's no hope, feeling like you just want to give up because it's too much, like you have no energy, you can't do it. Like those kinds of feelings are really difficult also, because you get stuck and then you can't do the things you want to do, and you feel bad about yourself because you can't do it. So getting support if you're feeling really sad and down and hopeless is really also important, because all of those things, if you get the support, it may take time. I mean, depending on your life, it may take a while, perhaps even a couple years, it depends. Maybe it's a few months, maybe it's a few years, it depends, but you can absolutely come out of that. And you'll recover faster if you have someone with whom to support you and help you find resources, and either talk about it or do activities or find resources. And but sometimes even just having somebody who cares about you, even if you don't talk about your life, somebody who listens and who's interested and who wants to know what you need and is trying to help you, can just make you feel encouraged and not so lonely and not so embarrassed. And that can be really helpful. Even if you don't tell them about what happened to you, you don't have to tell them about what happened to you, but just having some company and having, like, people say to us sometimes, like, I know you're there. Even if I don't talk to you, I know you're there. And it's just such a safety net. It's such a comfort to know that if I need something, I can reach out, because people often just feel really alone. And if they're embarrassed to talk about how they feel, they don't share with their loved ones, and they don't want to worry their loved ones. So sometimes having someone else that's not in your family, that is not even in your community, sometimes is great, because you don't feel worried about burdening them or worrying them. You don't worry that maybe they're going to say something about what you said and your information is going to get out. So, that can be really helpful. I mean, people hesitate and people are afraid, but most people, once they do it, they're like, oh, wow, this feels helpful. Even young guys, like young 30-year-old men who are like, I'm never going to talk about my life, or I'm not going to talk about how I feel sad or my most vulnerable things. And then they do it and they're like, wow, this is really helpful. I feel better.
Yeah, thank you. Because that's actually the culture I come from, for example, associates mental health with being crazy. So for me, the first thing I needed to learn was, no, I'm not crazy. I'm going through a lot. I came to a new country where I don't know anyone, and all my support group just collapsed, and all my routine is no longer, and my life has become something that I am not familiar with anymore. And those feelings of anxiety and depression and anger and so many emotions that stir up, those are really, really normal. That's what I learned when I didn't have trauma as per se, but those are common things also any immigrant feel. And I had to actually learn it's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to trust people who know what they're talking about. So thank you so much. And there's no shame because we all go through it. We just don't that much talk about it. So thank you for clarifying that. Um, so if there are no other questions, I think I will give the floor to
Jonas has raised.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, he
I'm
is.
ready.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead,
Oh,
Jonas.
you see a big hand right there on the
Ah,
screen.
I know, Jonas. Thank you for joining us. I know it's too early for you, but thank you.
I know, I know. Well, thank you. I think I zoomed in very late, so I kind of missed some of the part Dr. Anika said. I don't know if she mentioned about cultural shock and how cultural shock by itself is a trauma, I think. And I've seen a lot of immigrant people having problems, especially trying to, you know, get situated in a new environment. And then they see a lot of things that are not familiar with. And I've a couple of friends who literally left, the host country because of cultural shock. Well, we might mention a little bit about like how, the homosexuality is, for example, perceived in Ethiopia and then the rest of the world and that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you mentioned a little bit about how you guys deal with how your organization deals with cultural shock. If you can you hear me well? My sound is a little bit. I just woke up. so, so
Where are
yeah,
you located?
I'm in Ethiopia now. I'm
Yeah.
visiting Ethiopia. So yeah, the night you're talking, but you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, it's 4:30 a.m. where you are,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Jonas. All right.
No.
Do you have a question? Do you have an answer for him?
Sure. So I just wanted to say, Jonas, we didn't speak about that yet, but you're absolutely right. It's very overwhelming. And the more different the cultures are, the more overwhelming and confusing and destabilizing it is, and very difficult to navigate and find a new sense of yourself that tries to integrate your own culture and then the new place. It's very hard. And it can take a lifetime, right? I'm an immigrant as well. I come from Europe, but I feel I'm being here 30 years. I'm still adjusting. Like I'm still not used to it. It still feels weird. This is not home for me. And Europe is a lot less different from here than other places might be from here, right? And I'm not experiencing racism and I'm not experiencing a lot of things that other immigrants experience. So I think it's huge and it comes with so many things like the kinds of discrimination and poverty and loss of belonging and loss of status and the kind of grief that comes with losing who you were at home and who you become or how invisible you are when you become an immigrant. Like nobody recognizes you or knows anything about your background or your country or, and often looks down on you like you don't know anything or you don't have anything or who are you? You're just invisible. So I know it comes with so much grief and emotional conflict and struggle. So I think we talk about it with people, but oftentimes when people come, their immediate priorities are survival, survival in the new place, because they have so little resources. So we attend to survival, and then we also attend to, if they're having a lot of trauma related experiences, we try to help that reduce. And once the fundamental survival is more stable, when they have a job, I mean, if eventually they have asylum, they have some stability and they're emotionally feeling more okay and able to sleep, then it's easier to talk about some of these topics around cultural adjustment, longing for home, relationships with spouses and children, like all the things that are also very complicated that might have to do with separation or differences in how people change when they leave home, like so many complicated things. But often at the beginning, at least for the first year, it's really about survival and stabilizing emotionally and in one's daily life. So the culture shock is part of it. So we certainly talk about it, but sometimes people don't bring that as the priority because there's so many other things that are even higher and even more difficult than that initially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that clarification and for that wonderful question. So if there are no more questions, we can go to Tizita. She's been waiting patiently. And I think I have introduced you, but there are a lot of people that have come late. So I'm just going to do it again, Tizita, if you don't mind. So Tizita is going to speak about African communities program that provide community well-being services through community-led outreach activities, context, and linguistic-specific emotional support and case management support to the African communities in Alameda County and beyond. So without further ado, Tizita, I give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Sanait. Let me share a screen just for visual aid. I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation. So Anika has mentioned about Partnership for Trauma Recovery, and it's our bigger picture of our programming, service deliveries, our approach, the community member that we target. And I will be really focusing around African communities program because we work with African immigrant in Alameda County and as well in general in Bay Area. So this is like our brochure that we distribute for many community member, and I can share later on. So maybe you can ask a question like why African community.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Tizita, but are you seeing? So I don't see anything being shared.
Oh, let me.
Okay, now I can see it.
Okay.
Now I can see it. Okay.
Let me make it full screen. Yeah. How about now?
Perfect. Now we can see it. Yeah.
So yeah, like the first question is like maybe which comes into your mind, like why African communities? Because there are lots of immigrants who live in Alameda County or even in the Bay Area. So why we focus with African communities? Because in many communities, there are different programs that are really tailored to their context, to their culture. Whereas when you come to African communities, either they will be under the box of like African American or like in general with immigrant communities. So many service provisions are really tailored to a general immigrant communities or like to African American, where like especially for African communities, we have different contexts, we have a different culture, we have a socio-economic context. So considering that perspective, this program has been designed to really address their specific needs, their differential needs as an immigrant who live in the Alameda County or beyond. Yeah, like one of the thing is, like as I have mentioned earlier around being cultural context, I think Anika was really mentioning about that. Like why the need around like being cultural specific and context specific, because there are different ways that we don't really share in different perspective. Like for instance, if a service provider providing a service for an immigrant in general, they might not really avail an interpreter, for instance, or they might have a counselor who doesn't really know or understand the context or the culture. So based on that, our service is really tailored, and I really understand the specific context, the cultural context, the socioeconomic context, and as well the language issue. We really avail interpreters who really interpret different local language. So these are our team. We have a clinical team, we have also outreach team, and we have also a program management team. So you can see a lot like people from African communities. So many of our team really come from, maybe recently moved, many of us really recently moved from different African countries. We have a good representation in terms of like the community who live in Alameda County. So that also really help us in terms of bringing the context, the culture into the picture in our service delivery. So maybe just a few why African immigrants, I just really highlight here, like we have in Alameda County in particular, who are just like being counted in population census. We have around 17,000, which is a 2017 data, maybe outdated, but we have a good majority of community members who live in Alameda County. However, are they really represented in different service provision? That's really a question. Do they really access different services? That's also a question. So I think this program have a lot of service that really fill this kind of gap, because we tried really to bring that context, bring the different dynamics of African communities. Whenever we say African, I know we're talking about 55 countries, so it might really like having like a program that really represents 55 countries will be really hard, and as well hard to manage. However, we have a staff member, we have also like an advisory kind of committee from representing different African community members who really guide us, support us, and advise us in terms of tailoring different activities into our programming. So what do we offer as a service? The first one is African communities gathering. So like whenever you think about African communities, we really trust and really value the community healing. I can mention a lot of example to begin with, since we have, I see a lot of participants from Habesha community. So in terms of community healing, you can see coffee session, like a coffee ceremony that we have. So it's part of like a community healing. So we really appreciate bringing that dynamics into our programs services, because that are the community that's really highly valued. And also we saw it like in practice, like proven to really support community members to go through some kind of healing. You know, like just an example of coffee ceremony, for instance, when a woman like goes through a certain issue, maybe it can be domestic violence, it can be an issue with her like upbringing about her child and things like that. Like when in a coffee ceremony, she will have like her friends, like neighbors and things like that. And they talk about like different issues, which can really reduce a lot of stress. In that platform, they also share different experiences one to one another. So we really would like to create that kind of space, the community healing space in our programming, which really emanated from our culture, from our traditions and so on. So we have African community gathering that we conduct on a monthly basis, and that's mainly focused on different stressors, because as you know, African immigrants, especially newcomers, newly arrived community members, there are lots of issues, as Anika mentioned, like housing, immigration, employment, and on and on. There are lots of challenges for African immigrants, especially when you arrive. You don't have people around, you don't know your like a group that really have you as a support, like family members, friends. You just left back home. So when you arrive here as a newcomer, you need to really build that support system in place. So it's really hard to really navigate the system and at the same time access different services. So for us, the African Communities Gathering, we really tailored it from that perspective by identifying different needs like housing, employment, immigration, and other issues. And we will have that kind of conversation, and we will bring as well different expertise in terms of providing different information for the community so that they can really access those kind of services. So we found it very much helpful because we also really keep the momentum, like around immigration, you know, like during the Trump regime, there were really a lot of immigration laws coming out. So we really tried to support community members based on like keeping the momentum, like public charge, which really prevent a lot of community from getting immigration status. So we had like inviting different guest speakers based on their expertise on housing as well. You know, a lot of issues around accessing housing opportunities like affordable housing and things like that. So we invite an expertise to really give an information so that people really get those kind of services. We have also community events. Before COVID-19, we have been really collaborating with African-based association in terms of celebrating different events. It can be holiday or it can be cultural events. We collaborate with them so that we can sensitize community members around emotional support about mental health, so that we can destigmatize mental health, because as you know, mental health is a very stigmatized issue. One of the reasons is like it's because of lack of awareness or information. So to bring that into table, we just try to really disseminate those information and create awareness around those kind of topics. The other one is particularly for youth community, you don't see like a lot of programs that are really designed to them. So we've been collaboratively working with Auckland International High School, mainly because they receive a lot of newcomer students, like unaccompanied minors, and also students who really newly arrived and had a lot of barriers around like language and also navigating the system. So that was really like a good entry point for us in terms of bringing that social emotional support to the youth community member. So we've been really targeting youth boys and girls who really newly arrived to the US. And we had a conversation around acculturation, the generational gap, because when they really newly arrived here, they try to assimilate themselves with other students who live or stay here for a longer time, or like even other community members like white, Latinx, and so on. And like African parents who really would like to really maintain that culture and tradition, there is always cultural shock, and at the same time they would like to maintain and really transfer that tradition and culture to their children, and at the same time from the children they would like to assimilate themselves. So there is that kind of conflicting in a way, but we try to have bring that issues into a discussion so that like the youth can be empowered in a way to balance things in terms of assimilating themselves, acculturating to the context, but at the same time understanding their parents, because there is also positive impacts in terms of really maintaining their culture, tradition, and so on. So we had that kind of activities, and we also continue that during COVID-19. The other pieces around the mental health support, around social emotional support. We have a case management service, because even if we educate them around like, oh, you have this like a lot of stressor and like housing, immigration, but then like how are they going to apply for it? Like for instance, like if we give a housing kind of workshop to the committee member, they might not have also a skill to really apply and also understand different things. So we complement that with our case management service. We have staff member who can really support in terms of doing that, like maybe supporting in the application, assisting them in identifying different service provider whom they can reach out. And as well, we have an emotional support that can be really tailored in a one-on-one setting, because for instance, Anika was mentioning like someone who have a very traumatic experience back home, They might flee from different persecution, could be through different form of violence. So like, for instance, someone who's been sexually assaulted or have that kind of experience, she might not be open to be in a group setting to share her experience or stories. So we have really a tailored programming to everyone who really have a different choice. So for that community member who really would like to keep that kind of setting, we have a counseling for one-on-one session. So like our staff member who really support around emotional support as well, really understand the context, and at the same time they're originally from there. We have African clinician as well, in terms of really addressing the different needs of the community. So yeah, these are like the two dynamics of our services, and all services have been previously provided in person, but currently due to COVID-19, it's been almost a year and 4 months we've been providing it remotely. Actually, we really managed to do so in terms of conducting those things remotely, especially the African communities gathering. It helped us even to expand our reach, because there are lots of community members who participate in our monthly gathering because it's remote and they can access it, whether they are from Ethiopia, whether they're from Europe, whether they are from Eritrea, like they can really attend it. And we've also been inviting a speaker as well from different countries in Africa. So it's really great, like to bring the two dynamics, who really live in the diaspora at the same time, who can reflect back on what's really going on. So it was really helpful, especially in that particular setting, especially for African communities gathering. So Nate, how many minutes I have?
You can go ahead. You still have 3-4 minutes.
Okay.
It's okay. Take your time.
Thank you. So in relation to our eligibility criteria to get some of our services, I think Anika has gone through it, but for our like PTR in general, our services, we really focus on a certain community member around asylum seeker, refugees, or who flee from different form of violence or international human rights abuses. But for African community program, we focus on, like, in general, African immigrants, because even if you stay long here, like even if you're not like refugee status now, or like having an asylum status, even if you are like a citizen or like based on your immigration status, it's really hard somehow to really navigate the system in some context, because it's not about like staying that long. It's rather like how you really easily assimilate or really acculturate yourself into the context. So we think that like it's really beneficial for all like African immigrants, because there are lots of dynamics that really play a lot of role in terms of accessing services and also having that kind of support system, because we're all the time like really hustling with the day-to-day lives, and having this kind of different well-being kind of activities or that really support you around emotional support. It's really hard to get that time and space. And at the same time, there are lots of things that's really been a burden for, especially for African immigrants in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Giorgio ta mute برا.
Oh,
So our services are like, they are all for free. We do have a language interpretation to various local language. Even if we don't have, we recruit an interpreter depending on the need. We don't really require any immigration status, or we don't even also require health insurance. That's really a limitation for many African migrants who really newly arrived in US, because either they require a certain fee or require you to have been like health insurance, and for that you need to have also a certain immigration status. So we don't have a certain restriction on that. If you are like African immigrant and also in particular live around Alameda County or Bay Area, you are eligible to access our services, and we don't have really other requirements. So these are, maybe I can share later this one separately. These are like the link if you really would like to collaborate with us in conducting different African communities gathering. We're very much open, and we have a specific staff member who can support in that process. We have also counseling and emotional support that are really like clinicians who really understand the context, the culture, and also some of them are originally from different African countries. So we have also that kind of resources. In terms of case management, as we said, especially for newly arrived community, there are lots of things like necessities that are like place to live, or like to get a secure your immigration status, having that paper in place, or employed, or getting the language fluency. And those are like the basic necessities. And in terms of availing that, we have a case management staff member who can really assist those community members who really seek that kind of services. And also, like, if you would like to refer anyone, you can really reach out with this number. So what I have been talking is just to give you an example. We have been really conducting a different gathering, African communities gathering, inviting different guest speakers, and we've been talking about like just example of some of our conversation around Thanksgiving, around immigration issues, nutrition and diet. You know, like in many of African contexts, as you know, sometimes mental health is really considered as a luxury because there are lots of necessities that we really would like to maintain before really ensuring or really looking after ourselves. So even whenever you think about like the physical health, which is really, sometimes we really go to the hospital whenever it's really like getting worse situation. So imagine about the mental health issue, how it can be really less prioritized in our really day-to-day kind of our living. So we try to bring that component into like a different conversation so that we can all really look after ourselves and keeping our well-being, which is really basic. I mean, it's not really a luxury, it's a necessity to really maintain our well-being and wellness. So we had those kind of conversations. These are like the community event that we've been conducting with different African-based associations who are like located in the Bay Area. So we have been like Imoja Festival, and some of them you might know them already. International Refugee Day, the Ethiopian New Year, African Independence Day. Like we celebrate different cultural events as well, so that we can have that kind of community healing through that process. We network, we collaborate, we create that relationship, trust, and things like that. Yeah, this one is with the youth group. We have a lot of conversation around trust building, cultural shock, friendship. Friendship is also as well, like, because when you come here, like some of the youth group, they were really mentioning that I've been really isolated. I don't have really a friend. I don't know whom to talk to. And also on top of that, there is a language barrier. So within this group, we had a discussion around how to really like even to form friendship, or who's really like about selecting a good friend. Like we just really brought that kind of discussion so that they can really easily assimilate to a community member. In managing their emotion, race and racism. Sometimes when we come from different African countries, the way we see the perspective and the angle around race and racism is very much different from the US system. So even knowing and understanding how racism really manifests, and also the interaction that we have and around Paul's spirituality and things like that. We had those conversations with the youth group, and it's been very much helpful for the youth group that we have been leading. So maybe I can stop here. Yeah, we have a different social media and you can follow us. Yeah, please feel free to ask any question, but it's just like a summary of our program, and hopefully we'll have more in the future. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Tizita. If you can unshare so we can see you. Oh my God, that's a lot of information, but also I am really inspired. You are fairly new to the US. And what a great gift to you to actually find a job where you are, and you know, you are a manager there, and you are empowered as you integrate to the US culture yourself. You're feeling empowered, and then you are empowering others. What a gift. And I really feel inspired by you, because I would have thought like you've been here for many, many years. When you told me you've been here only for 3 years, my mind was blown. It's just amazing. Thank you. It was really nice to have you, and thank you for all the good things you do for our community. We appreciate you. And so what I heard you, it's amazing. I actually did not read anything. I usually come empty cup so that I can also be educated. And it's amazing that you guys have like, it's not just the case management and then, you know, the mental health part of it, but you have, it's an all-compassing and it's all integral way of looking at it. And I was very impressed by some of the programs that you have, like the African Community Gathering. And I had no idea you do the Refugee Day. I was not aware of that. I know that Santa Clara does that, but that's really amazing, because people more than anything need community, and that's the biggest problem. Like, you know, you don't feel like you belong, and you're alone, and you don't know if you how to make new friends. And I have so many people and my clients and my some of my friends say, oh my God, you know, how can I make friends in this age? I'm like too old to make any friends. All the friends that I had, you know, from childhood, those are the real friends. I can't make friends, which is not true, right? And it's important to kind of create a familiar environment for them to thrive and talk and, you know, participate in, you know, their own cultural dance or coffee ceremony. And I hope you have like fire ceremony for some of our African friends, and dancing and stuff like that. That kind of creates belonging. And I was very impressed. And then you said you have a youth program where you teach them, you know, how to make friends and all the conversations that are very necessary right now, because we need those conversations. As adults, we need those conversations, because there's this part of bullying you were talking about, and then there's this part of a lot of things that we are not familiar with. And if we are, there are more coming all the time, right? The racism and then the police brutality. We don't even know how to have this kind of conversation. So I am so happy to learn that you are serving our community in a very meaningful way that will help them integrate, because without that support, we're, you know, all those dreams that we brought with us, they're gone. So those are some of the things that really touched me. I know you have said a lot of things, and it's a lot of information, and I'll share on the group, you know, how they can find you. But thank you for all the good information and for everything that you do, both of you and Anika. So I'll give an opportunity for questions, if there are any questions from the audience. Just unmute or just raise your hand, even though I couldn't see the hand earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it is really, some of it is complicated to me. I have a question now, like trauma. I know how it comes and what the symptoms or something like that. But the confusion on me is now, is if we didn't get help from trauma, that it go to the mental health, mental problem. And another thing, there is one thing to PTI or something. what is the difference between trauma and the PTI?
Tizita, you got the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you a little bit clarify? Maybe I can, if it's like related with trauma, I will defer to Anika, but can you clarify the question? Maybe yeah.
I think
I think he meant to say PTSD.
PTSD, okay.
PTSD. Yeah.
PTSD.
So your first question, I believe, if I understood, was like, if people don't get support after experiencing trauma, what happens? What can happen to them? And I think that really varies from person to person. I mean, I think the way, you know, Tizita, the way you were describing all the different sort of ways of intervening to support people, some people can find different ways of support and they can heal on their own and they do okay. And they do well, actually. And some people have a very hard time. And so if they don't get support, they might actually get worse over time. You know, if they continue to feel, to have a PTSD, for example, and a lot of anxiety and a lot of difficulty sleeping and fear and difficulty going outside and feeling really down, and that lasts for many years, they can feel worse and get, you know, have health problems like blood pressure problems, heart problems, like different physical difficulties too that can come from the stress on the body of feeling not okay all the time, feeling very stressed and feeling very down all the time. So it can lead to other health problems if it's not addressed for some people. But it really varies. Some people heal on their own and in different ways, and people have different resources and different supports, you know, depending on their life, depending on their family experience, depending on their, if they have a partner or not, depending on if they have education and they can find a job and find meaning in their work. I mean, there's so many different ways people can recover. So it really depends. And also, you know, the two people who have a same traumatic experience might respond very differently, where someone might have a mild response that doesn't last too long and they can recover. And some people might be very overwhelmed and very affected and it could last for many years. So we vary in how we respond to things. So that question really, it depends on the person. But if the person keeps suffering and keeps feeling bad and keeps feeling like it's hard to live life, it's bad for them. I mean, they, you know, they lose opportunities in their life to be able to be okay. And so it is really sad. And for some people, it can lead to worsening, like a very serious depression can get worse. And a very serious depression can lead to wanting to die, or can lead to, I don't know, just very big difficulties and being completely isolated and lonely and unable to do things.
Yeah, maybe just to add, yeah, just to add what Anika said is like we really would like to focus around prevention, because that's something like, because whenever you see those kind of signs and symptoms and recurring in a way, there are lots of coping strategies that you can also as well prevent it. And if it happens as well, there are different ways that you can heal. And we as well really strongly support as well the healing system from the community leader and as well as family member, because it can really speed up our healing process, because especially individually, there are lots of things that we don't really tackle. But whenever you have like a support within your family member, within your community, the healing really would be very much speed up in a way. Though like sometimes it's different, as Anika said, in terms of range, but those support systems really help us in terms of speeding up our healing process.
And I believe, Mr. Gebremichael, you asked another question about PTSD. Can you repeat your question about that, please?
No, I just wanted to know what is the difference between PTSD and the trauma.
Okay, so the post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD is, you know, it's called a disorder. I disagree with that. I don't believe it's a disorder. I believe it's a response. But that describes like the kind of ways people respond to a traumatic experience. So a trauma is the thing that happens, the dangerous, frightening, harmful thing that happens. And post-traumatic stress response is the person's response to that experience of danger. And post-traumatic stress can include the kind of fear, the kind of sadness, the kind of difficulty sleeping, headaches, like a lot of muscle tension because of fear, worrying all the time, like your mind going really fast and you can't slow down your mind because you're worried. You don't trust people because you're afraid, because people hurt you, so you don't trust. You don't feel like going out, you feel like staying home, you don't want to see people, you want to isolate, like different things like that that have to do with response to trauma. The response to being afraid, or to being physically hurt, or to being harmed in any way, of being in danger. And it's the body's response to avoiding danger, which continues after the danger. So even though you might not be in danger in your daily life, you continue to feel like you're in danger, and you continue to react like things are not safe. You don't feel safe, you don't feel calm, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel trusting, like all those things, because you are so affected by having been unsafe and having been frightened.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that great question and great answers from both of you. Is there any more questions for either Tizita or Anika?
Jonas, I think he's raising his hand.
For some reason, I don't see your hand. Go ahead, Jonas.
Okay. Well, I think I have a comment as well as a question follow up to that, and this is related to what Mr. Tekla asked. And this is a very good question actually. PTSD or PTSR, and also anything related in our life that results in the response, traumatic response. And because the fact that we came from all over the world, most especially from the last 20, 30 years, has been an exodus of immigrants coming to the US and the rest of the world, from Africa, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and also North Africa as well, through a lot of traumatic experiences, even crossing through the desert and the ocean, and even risking their life to wells and other danger. That happened to Ethiopians and Eritreans, more so to Eritreans, and also in the Middle East, what happened with war in the Middle East and the Syrian, a lot. I mean, this is something that I don't know, we might see it somehow down the road, but a lot of people are carrying their pain within their God. I don't know. I mean, so I don't know how you guys, your organization, deal with identifying those people, especially those they have gone through a lot of this, traumatic experiences, and then how we deal with those kind of people to have, make them feel comfortable, they're okay, because the brain is very complicated. It's a very complicated organ. It might include all the information, and somehow, someday, it might explode. And we see it, here and there, especially in the US, people committing suicide or, killing others and all that. This is a traumatic response. So I don't know for specific with the community, and more so through Ethiopian and Eritrean, also North African, even, Middle East, like finding all those, I don't know, very prone community, domain of the community is good, and then reaching out to that. I don't know. I mean, it might be a big question, but I think if you look through that, that might be one approach. I don't know what the organization is doing with that. And so this is kind of question, but at the same time, comments. But specific question for Alameda County, the Bay Area, Oakland, and all, San Francisco, San Jose area. There are a lot, big chunk of African community. The percentage is big from the data that you presented. So how do you identify those people? How do you reach out very important because I've seen a lot of, especially Eritreans, very traumatic experience, at the same time very stressful. So how do you deal with that? That's the comment and question I have, but you might shape it up as you go. It might be too much information.
Thank you, Jonas. By the way, Anika and Tizita, Jonas is a neurologist. So that, do I say it right?
Neuroscience.
Neuroscientist, neurobiologist, and he knows a lot about the brain and all that. And just to give you a little bit background.
Thank you. I heard you say Dr. Jonas, so I was wondering what kind of doctor you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tizita, you want to start? Go ahead.
I can, yeah. So around the communities, especially for Eritrean Ethiopian communities, in the Bay Area, as you say, like there is really a good representation of the community member who live in that specific area, and majority of our staff member as well is from Eritrea and Ethiopia. I personally am originally from Ethiopia, so in terms of really, like as you said, like within the last 20 years or so, there are lots of violence that really happened to community member, and due to that reason, people flee from their countries. And in our approach, in our entry point is people who really come here, especially the newcomers who really like flee from their countries due to different violences, persecution, and so on. Here in the US as well, there is a new system. It's not like something as we think, like people think like, oh, US is like a heavenly country and you can access whatever you need and things like that, but it's not the case. And that's really triggered their past trauma. Because whenever you don't have a house to live, whenever you don't have like an income to really support your family, yourself, and whenever you don't have like even a paper to say like I'm a person, even to call yourself as a human being, sometimes it's really inclined to that as well. So those are really triggering for our community member in terms of their past trauma. Like, I did not this happen, I will not be even here. Like, I can live freely in my own country, in a community that I really belong to. So those are really triggering things in terms of really bringing their traumatic experience in hand. And Anika was really explaining as well, those symptoms really recurring in lots of time because they had a lot of things coming here. So the way we approach is in terms of addressing those stressors, like to begin with, because we also need to really build that relationship and trust with the community before, like we're really, like we touch it like the tip of the iceberg by addressing like some of the stressor while they really newly arrived here. So once like that person have a housing, stable housing, once that person have a paper, like there is like really an openness around getting those kind of services to really address a long-term trauma that they had before. So it's more of like a transition that we really provide in a way, so that people really get the support that they need around their mental well-being and mental health. The way we approach it is really like a transition. We address some of the basic stressor, which can really trigger their past trauma. Then once that's addressed, we can also address the following things around their past traumatic experience, because it also can impact the way they communicate with other people, the way they can really like address, like in terms of problem solving, and also their experience, like having a relationship. Like if someone is really like, while they flee, if they have been raped here, like in terms of like having a new relationship, it can be really hard. So once that person have a housing, stable employment and immigration, we can get into the other one with the counseling and things like that. So it's more of a transition way in terms of like layer by layer, we address different problems of the community. So the other one, you really bring like a great question around identifying the community. So we know that like there is a large representation of Ethiopian and Eritrean community in the Bay Area, and as you said, in San Jose, Oakland, and San Francisco, like we have a lot of good representation there. So the first thing that we do is really reaching out to different community leaders. They can be an association leader, they can be a community center directors, they can be religious leaders like in the mosque or in the church. Either it can be Protestant Church, Orthodox Church, Catholic Church. We reach out to those religious leaders, community leaders, influential figures, either it can be like in different perspectives, in socio-economic perspective, from professional setting. We reach out to different community leaders in terms of representation, and we had those conversations in terms of bringing their community into our platform. So they are the one, even from the very beginning, really really inform us in terms of how we can design our programming, our approach, really trying to really identify those stressors, because that's really like one thing that we can address, like in terms of service provision. Then we can really go to the other kind of layers of issues related to mental health. So yeah, like the identification is really come from the like identifying those community leaders who can have more voice, and also at the same time representing different community members, so that we can identify different cultural issues, different needs from the community members through them, and then they can really take us as a gatekeeper of the community. They can take us to the larger community. So it's that modality that we have used, but recently we are also really progressing a lot in terms of bringing the social media, bringing like a different spaces so that we can engage a lot of community members, because like not everyone really access a certain services or a certain information unless we diversify the approach. For instance, if something like, for instance, in many public sphere, we found like a lot of male community member. What about the women who are really like supporting their kids and taking care of different household children? Like, how can we access them? So yeah, like diversifying different service, I think different way of modality of delivering our information and service, I think it's really key. Yeah.
Tizita, thank you so much. May I add a tiny bit to that, to what Tizita's explaining? Is that okay? Is there time, or is it?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. It's very important. We need to address those.
So, I mean, one of the goals of the African Communities program is really to do exactly what Tizita's explaining, is to go out and try to familiarize people with what we offer, and also try to help people feel more safe, that it's okay to seek support, perhaps initially in practical ways, which feels a little more comfortable, and then little by little, perhaps in more emotional ways that feel more scary or unfamiliar. So building trust with people for our organization, and building trust that it's okay to say, I'm having a hard time, I would like some support. So that's a really slow, gradual process in communities. And then the other way we're connected is less communal, but more individual, where we work very closely with immigration attorneys, and also with the main public hospital, Highland Hospital Human Rights Clinic. So we collaborate a lot with them around asylum applications. So a lot of the referrals we get are directly for individual asylum seekers who have expressed to their lawyer or to their doctor that they're having a hard time and that they're interested in getting some support. So we get those referrals that way, and then people don't, they don't feel like the community knows that they're getting support. There's a way in which that's a little bit safe because they don't have to say that. So we're trying to sort of be on both ends, where it's a little more anonymous to get the individual referrals from other providers. And then there's the community approach, where we're trying to actually help people feel more comfortable with this idea and feel that we're a safe place. We're not going to report people to the immigration authorities. We're not the government. We're not going to share their private information. We're not going to tell the community members what we know about their life. So kind of on both ends, we're trying to connect with people.
That's amazing. That was actually one of my questions about confidentiality, because in our community, I know that's true, because people feel like, scared that whatever they speak there, might be in the community, because it might be a small community where people are, very intimate, and they don't want their stories to come out. So that's very important, because some people might not come because of that, just because they don't know it's confidential, whatever they speak with you, right? So thank you so much for addressing that. And oh my God, it's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about your organization and what you do. And it's very broad. It's like I didn't actually expect the whole part of your program. It's not just this and this, but it's very, very, like, I don't even have words. I'm stumbling on words. So thank you for what you do. And I will definitely refer people to your organization now that I have a lot of information, and not all of it, but at least I have the idea of what you do. And I would be very comfortable referring them to your program so they can benefit from your amazing programs. So thank you so much for coming and giving your time. And is there any more questions? I don't think we have any other questions here or on Facebook. I think with that also it's 7:20. Thank you for coming. And I hope you enjoyed the interview, and also the interview with my son, Joseph, popping out of nowhere. Oh,
Tonight.
sorry. Yes. Tekle? Yes. Sorry.
Joe.
You have a question?
Giorgio.
Giorgio. Oh, Giorgio.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a question?
اسمع له.
Oh,
اسمع له ده. Okay.
Yes.
My question is to Tizita.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any connections with other program or organization to African? For example, there is an organization, African of Advocacy program. Do you have a relation or connection? Do you share ideas with them? If you do, if can share it with us.
Thank you so much, Giorgio. Yeah, African Advocacy Network is one of our really primary partner. So we work with them closely. We really identify different issues, collaborate with them in terms of conducting different African communities gathering, educational workshop, even attending their events. So we collaboratively working with African Advocacy Network, not only with them, but as well with different African-based organization and association in the Bay Area, like the Ethiopian Community Center, Eritrean Community Center, Priority African Network, name it. I mean, the Nigerian, there are lots of community members based here in the Bay Area. So we collaboratively closely work with them. So yeah, feel free to share.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Giorgio. Sorry, I didn't see there was a question, but with that, I think we can conclude. And thank you so much for coming, and let's keep in touch, okay?
Okay.
I think, bye, Giorgio.
Thank you.
I was more talking to Anika and Tizita, and hopefully this is not the last one. All right.
It was a pleasure and an honor. Thank you. And Jonas, for joining us from Ethiopia early in the morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes. And everybody who attended, have a wonderful Friday evening, and except for Jonas, go back to sleep. Go back.
Yeah.
Go back to bed.
Yes.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye now.